Hello and welcome to the Postcard Professor, where we take complex ideas and explain them in the space of a postcard. In this video, we're going to be using our beam and bar elements to create a two-dimensional frame element. So this frame element is going to be very similar to the two-dimensional truss element that we created in this separate video, in that we're going to be using forces in the X and Y, the global reference frame, in order to combine multiple elements together. The difference being that because we're using the beam element here, we're also going to be able to use bending forces or moments in order to restrict rotation at the joints. Meaning now we can have more than just pinned joints. We can actually account for joints that have been welded together. In order to talk about this, we need to define multiple reference frames. And so we're going to have our global reference frame, which is X and Y, alongside our local reference frame, which is aligned with this element, and we're going to call that Xi and eta. And of course, these reference frames are separated by an angle theta. Looking back at our beam element, we account for the shear force on both sides of the element, which is the force in the eta direction, alongside the moments on both ends. Because we're talking about a beam element here, there's no forces due to the extension of the beam. But just like how the bar element had to deal with forces in the eta direction during derivation, we still need to account for those forces whenever we're writing out our local system of equations. And so we need a 6-element vector in order to describe all of the equations we're going to have. And we're going to count for forces in both directions, and then also the moment on both ends of our beam here. And this is going to be equal to that same E times I over L cubed multiplied by a matrix of terms. And that's going to be multiplied by the displacement in the local reference frame. We have our delta X's and delta etas here. The phi we actually get to use in both our local reference frame and our global reference frame, because a rotation here is not going to change the rotational displacement, just like a translation of the entire beam is not going to change the relative displacement of the beam itself. So we can get away with using the exact same terminology for the rotational displacement in the local reference frame and in the global reference frame. To write out the beam elements, it helps to subdivide our 6x6 into 4 different 3x3s. Let's look at the forces in the Xi direction. We know that those are going to be equal to 0 because the beam cannot support forces in Xi. What that means for us is that our equation here has to say that 0 is equal to 0. And the easiest way to do that is simply to fill in zeros along the top row and the row for FC2. And doing that, we've taken care of these 2 extra equations that the one-dimensional frame element doesn't know about. Now, likewise, the delta X's have no impact on our forces for this beam element. And so we can just fill in zeros for those 2 columns as well. And what's left is just that 4x4 matrix that we derived back when we were doing the one-dimensional beam element. And so we can fill in the rest just by copying that. Now, as before, our goal here is to transform this from the local reference frame to the global reference frame. And so we're going to be using some of the same tools that we did before, where we want to be able to write the local displacements, the delta Xi, delta eta, and phi, in terms of the global displacements, u, v, and phi. And once again, it's helpful to just kind of split this matrix up so we can recognize that this top left section is going to be exactly what we had before. It's writing the delta Xi and delta eta in terms of u and v. And so that's just going to be our cosine, sine, negative sine, and cosine. And then the last row and the last column are just describing how phi relates to the rest. And phi has nothing to do with u or v, and is simply equal to itself. And so that's how we get this last equation. And again, phi does not affect xi or eta, and so we can just write zeros there as well. We're going to go ahead and name this matrix because we're going to need to use it. And we're going to go ahead and name these vectors as well as the local displacements and the global displacements. The reason we're doing this is we need to write a 6x6 matrix that describes how all of our displacements in the local reference frame are affected by the global displacements. But that's a bit of a pain, and so we're going to use this as shorthand to write a vector that's composed of other vectors. So we'll say that this is our delta c for node 1. And by what we mean by this is it's all three of these terms for node 1 and all three of those same terms for node 2. And that's going to be equal to a matrix of matrices multiplied by, again, this vector composed of two separate vectors. This is just shorthand for writing out the 6 element vectors that we're going to need. Now, in here, we can just write our transformation vector that we use to transform from global to local. And we can recognize that this should go on the diagonal because the displacements for node 2 should only affect the displacements for node 2 and should have no effect for the displacements on node 1. So we'll have a matrix of zeros off the diagonal and just the same transformation matrix on the diagonal. And once again, we're going to name this matrix. We're going to name this our cosine matrix. As before, we're going to give these vectors names as the local forces, the local stiffness matrix, and the local displacements. So we can take that equation and use our definitions here to transform that to the global reference frame. Because our local forces are simply the cosine matrix multiplied by the global forces, our KL is going to stay the same, but then our local displacements become this C matrix again, multiplied by our global displacements. Then we can pre-multiply by the inverse of C. That gets rid of this C, and we're left with the global forces being equal to this C inverse multiplied by the local matrix, the local stiffness matrix multiplied by C, and all that multiplied by U. And then, as before, these three matrices become our global stiffness matrix. And I'm going to write that this is the global stiffness matrix for the beam element. The reason is we're going to need both the beam and the truss. And in fact, we can say that the global stiffness matrix for the frame is simply equal to the sum of the global stiffness matrix for the beam plus the global stiffness matrix that we derived previously for the truss. So at this point, let's go ahead and write out exactly what the global stiffness matrix for the beam and the truss are. So for the beam, everything, of course, is going to be pre-multiplied by this EI over L cubed. But, of course, since we're multiplying so many matrices together, things get a little complicated. Now, there are patterns here, and I'll try to point those out. In this upper left-hand 2x2, we're going to have a 12 times s squared, negative 12 times cs, negative 12 times cs, and 12 times c squared. And really, all this is doing is it's taking this 12 that we have in our matrix up here, and it's just splitting it among the two directions. So, for instance, if we have cosine of theta equal to 1, if things are perfectly aligned, right, theta is equal to 0, then the 12 is going to be only in this middle element of that upper left-hand quadrant. But if things are rotated, our beam is not going to be resisting movement in y anymore, but instead, as it flips, it's going to be resisting movement in x. So that's why the sine term comes up to the upper left-hand corner. This 6L gets split up among this location and this location, and so we end up with a 6 times L times C, and a negative 6 times L times S. And likewise, this 6 is split up among these two locations. So you end up negative 6LS and 6LC. Finally, because our phi doesn't change between the two coordinate systems, this 4L squared is going to stay exactly the same. And all 4 of these quadrants are going to follow that same pattern as we split up those directions. So this is our full expression of the beam stiffness matrix in 2 dimensions. Now we've written the truss stiffness matrix before, but we haven't accounted for the rotation. So the truss stiffness matrix, of course, is pre-multiplied by EA over L. And it's also going to be a 6 by 6, so we can fit this into our existing scheme. But first we need to account for how this affects the moment, right? Because this line here and this line here are both going to be the moment, and then this line and this line are both going to be the rotation. And neither of those affect the truss element. And so we just get to fill in each of those rows and columns with zeros. And what's left is going to be exactly what we had for the 2D truss element, that 4 by 4 matrix. And then once we calculate these two matrices, we simply add them together, and that accounts for everything we need for the full frame element. In the next video, we will actually use this for an example, but for now, I hope this was informative, and I will catch you next time.